Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. I'm Caesar Carino, your host, and our guest today is one that everybody knows in Wadsworth, Charlie Bowes. Charlie, you are one of our younger ones. You're not the youngest one we've ever had in the program, but you've built a legacy in the fire department and in business and as a person and as a downtown merchant in your young life. Would you mind telling us when you were born and where you were born and who your parents are and all of that?
Well, I'm a lifetime resident of Wadsworth. June 8th, 1941.
June 8th, 1941.
Lived in Wadsworth all my life. Raised on South Lyman Street, just next to the Ohio Injector.
Is that where you were living when you were born? Your parents were living when you were born?
We moved there probably a year or so after I was born.
Where were you born? Where were you living? Where were your parents living when you were born?
I think on the corner of Summit and Oak.
Summit and Oak. Summit and Oak in the 40s?
Yes.
That would have been a dirt road on Summit at that time, wouldn't it?
Possibly.
Yeah,
yes.
I think Oak might have been too, because at that time it wasn't very well developed. Now, of course, right now it's all developed. Who are your parents?
My mother is Mary Bowes. My father, Marty, is deceased.
Right. And when did he die?
I think 69.
69. And Mary, maiden name?
Is Pecknick.
Pecknick, right. We had her on the program, as you
Yes,
well
right.
remember, because she was one of the very, very last match shop girls. And she gave us a tremendous amount of information. One bit of information she gave us was that she had two sons, and unfortunately the other one is gone now. What was his name? Jim?
James, yes,
right,
Jim.
and he's gone. And he died when?
1965.
1965. It was just a horrible tragedy, a tractor accident.
Tractor accident, yes.
You never forget those kinds of things. But we do have the privilege of you being able to represent a couple families today, because you're married to
Nancy Bell.
Nancy Bell, who was the daughter of
Marion and Edwin Bell.
Edwin Bell, and not the twin Edgar Bell.
Right.
This is Edwin Bell, Marion
Everhard.
Marion Everhard,
Yes.
that's right, Marion Everhard. Marion Everhard Bell. And where are Ed and Marion now?
They're both deceased.
Both deceased.
Yes.
And when did Edwin Bell die?
I can't answer that.
And what about
I'm not
Marion
sure of
Bell?
That just recently, a couple years.
A couple of years ago, right. And the Everhards are related to the Youngs, the injector, Youngs in
Yes.
the injector match shop, all that Young family. Charlie, and I probably will always call you Charlie. Some people call you Chuck, some people call you Charles. What does your wife call you?
Charlie.
Charlie. So we'll call you Charlie all the way through. Charlie, tell us a little bit about your growing up days. Even though you don't go back 100 years or 80 years or 90 years, there was a lot going on during the war years. And what do you remember about the war years? You were a child during the war years.
Well, I guess I can't tell you a lot about that. I do remember that we were involved in the war, and how a lot of things changed as far as businesses and manufacturers. Right. It was all geared towards the war years. And
you went all the way through Wadsworth High School.
Yes.
What about the elementary schools?
Started at Franklin, and then when Sacred Heart opened, I went to Sacred Heart, and after the Sacred Heart, I went to the junior high, which is now the junior high, and graduated from there in 1960.
In the old high school, which is now Central School, right. And do you remember some of the people who graduated with you, just friends, so we can get an idea of what?
Well, Bob Lyron, Jerry Adams, Mark Burkholder.
How about girls? Did you think of girls in those days?
Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Jerry Brown was there.
Well,
Carol Schultz.
Carol Schultz,
Yeah.
okay. Carol Schultz, who lived on Crestwood Avenue. Father was Ray and...
Well, they lived on Pine Street.
Oh, really?
Or Park Street. Park Street. They lived on Park Street.
I thought Carol was daughter of Ray and Ruth Schultz. Could be.
Well, I know they lived on Park.
On Park Street, okay,
Yes.
all right. You, after graduation, you graduated, first of all, what year?
1960.
1960. And what was happening in the world in 1960?
Well, I don't recall of anything
Nothing great big.
spectacular, special.
2 years later, something big happened. That was the president of the Kennedy assassination in 1972.
Yes, I
you remember
do
that pretty well?
Yes.
Do you remember where you were at the time?
I was at work, I think at that point in time, I was still working for Verge Hartman at M&S Auto Parts.
Okay, now tell us, I'm glad you mentioned Verge Hartman, and we want to talk about him for a second, and don't let me forget, because that's extremely important because of the relationship between Verge Hartman and what you're doing right now, and where Verge Hartman was vis-a-vis the newspaper. And we'll talk about that in a second, but do you remember how that came about? I mean, how did you hear of the news of Kennedy's assassination, for instance?
I think I heard it on the radio.
I can tell you how I heard it. I was going down to the box board to pick up some cardboard because the following Saturday we were going to, this was on a Friday, I believe, that he was assassinated. And on a Saturday, we were having a pancake breakfast. The Norton firemen were going to have a pancake breakfast for some kind of they're going to give money to somebody. And I was involved, and I went down to get cardboard to make big signs or whatever. And as I was going into the box board, the guard came out and said, do you have your radio on? And I said, yes, I do. So, well, and I thought, because if your radio is on, maybe that might touch off something. And of course, you can tell us more about those kinds of alarms. But he said, what are they saying about Kennedy? And I said, well, I don't know. So I turned it on. I don't think I had it on. I turned it on. Of course, I learned that he was assassinated at that point. Now, after you got out of high school, you went to work for M&S Auto Parts, Virgil Hartman. Tell us about Virgil Hartman, M&S Auto Parts. What do they do, and why they were such an important cog in the mechanization of Wadsworth?
Well, I actually started to work for Verge Hartman in probably June of '55, sweeping floors, cleaning up.
Before you graduated.
Before I graduated, worked through probably June of '62. I'm not sure of the dates, but spent a lot of time with Verge Hartman in the back of the building that we're now in. He only rented half the building.
Who owned the building?
Jack Hall owned the building.
Jackson Hall.
Jackson Hall.
Jackson Hall's father probably had it. H.J. Hall had it before that.
Yes.
Jerry Hall. Now, what was in the front of that building? And tell us geographically where it is, because 50 years from now the building may not be there.
Well, its address is 129 Broad Street, which is beside the Marathon Station and the old Strand Theater. We're in the middle of that. In the front part of the building was Abrams Liebert Insurance Company.
After the newspaper?
After the newspaper. I don't recall of the newspaper being there other than with pictures and photographs that I have.
It was the Banner Press, I believe, at that time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And the Virgil Hartman then had what kind of an operation in the behind there? Virgil
had basically a machine shop auto parts operation. He was a little heavier in the machine shop, but did have a retail sales, wholesale customers of auto parts.
Right. And M&S meant what?
Marcus and Sabrell
Marcus and Sabrell.
two people that started the business.
Right. And are they around? Are the Sabrells around? Are the Marcuses around?
I don't think either's around.
They're probably all gone by now.
Just not sure.
And what about Virgil Hartman himself?
Virgil Hartman is still around. We see him occasionally.
And where does he live?
He lives on College Street across from Isham School.
I want to try to get Virgil on the program because his name has come up time and time and time again.
He would have a wealth of information.
I'm sure he would. Tell me, Charlie, if you will, a little bit about Virgil, his family, and his outstanding business ethics. Just a good person all the way around.
Well, Virgil was a very hard worker.
Oh, you bet he was.
He and Kate, his wife, ran the business. She did inventory management and was there most of the time, and Virgil was in the machine shop most of the time.
Tell us a little bit about Virgil's stature.
Well, he was a very strong person, strong-minded.
Very strong.
Very, very knowledgeable. Could just remember things, it seems like forever, that he knew what was going on, what had to be done from old items, and just very, very knowledgeable.
What about, who else worked there with him and you as well?
Dale Yoder worked there. Paul Buhite worked there. And John Whitman, which John Whitman was from Doylestown.
Doylestown Whitmans.
Yes.
They're all related to the Whitmans in Wadsworth, though.
Yes, that is correct. Dale Yoder was from Wadsworth.
Right. Which Yoder family, do you know?
No, I don't.
West of town.
West of town.
Right.
No, he lived east of town.
Yoders lived east of town?
Dale did, yes. Behind where Axelrod, Chrysler, Plymouth in that development.
Oh, okay. I thought that the Yoders all lived west of town. North.
No, I know Dale lived out there.
Okay,
now.
Good.
What street, I'm not sure.
Surely. And who else was there? What about, did Virgil Hartman have a partner?
No, Virgil did not have a partner.
Did not have a partner.
He worked for Marcus and Sabrell, and then that partnership divided up, and I would say in about 1949 he bought the business from Mrs. Marcus.
From Mrs. Marcus. Now, when we talk about machine shop, what is necessary in machine shops for car engines and for cars?
Well, the main thing at that point in time was valve work, valve jobs. He also did engine boring, rebuilding the total engine. But the main purpose back then was valve jobs and replacement of engine bearings and piston rings.
Things of that nature, it's a big job. It's a very, very big job. Do you remember any of the first jobs that you had in the machine shop, for instance?
Yeah, probably the first jobs, of course, being new on the block there, got all the odd jobs and dirty jobs, basically tearing down cylinder heads and engines and cleaning them was most of the things that I did early going.
Were you always mechanically involved?
Yes.
Always mechanically involved. Now, did this start your profession in automotives, or did something else happen immediately thereafter?
Well, I've basically always been mechanically inclined. I had a little bike shop at home on South Lyman Street where we lived, and put bicycles together and repaired bicycles. And across the street, I think 207 South Lyman Street, Bob Swigert built a new garage, and I just spent a lot of time over there and getting that kind of information and knowledge from those people that worked on automobiles.
You picked this up just on your own?
Yes.
Right. Now, the bicycle shop that you had, was that something that you invented, or is that something Mom and Dad invented to keep you home?
I guess that I don't think Mom and Dad did that to keep me home. I was always around the house, helping around the house, yard work. I just liked
doing it.
fixing things, and that just, I think, came a little bit natural.
How did you then progress from M&S Auto Parts? Where did you go from there?
In '62, Verge got a little slow, so he laid me off, and I went to work for a Schreiber Auto Parts in Akron on West Market Street. And in the machine shop there, I spent several years working. And just, again, it was something in the line of what I was already doing. After that, I went to work for Ross Allen in the Allen Auto Parts store on Highland Place.
Okay, now tell us exactly where Highland Place is geographically. Tell us a little bit about Ross Allen and who Ross Allen's family is here in Wadsworth.
Well, the location is on South Lyman Street, or I'm sorry, North Lyman Street, in the first block, across from the telephone office.
Right, and the telephone office may not be here at that time, but if at the intersection of Broad and Lyman, approximately, what, 300 feet?
Approximately 300 feet.
300 feet.
And then
It's an
it
alley
goes
is what
east.
it is.
It's an alley.
Yeah.
It goes east off of Lyman to Highland.
And who lived in the first house north of the alley, or Highland Place?
I don't
Was that the
know
Hartzels?
who lived, well, now that would be on
Highland Avenue.
On Highland Avenue.
Yes, on Highland.
That would be the Hartzels.
Yeah. The Hartzels lived in the first house north.
Yes.
Who lived in the first house south?
Would be Charles Bixler.
Right. Now, who lives there now?
Mike Smith.
Mike Smith. And Mike Smith is
He's the director
of public, or rather of
Steiner Youth Center.
Right. And do you live anywhere close by there?
I live in the Hartzell house that we bought that.
You live in the Hartzell house, right. The Hartzell house, I wanted to bring that out. The fact that you went up there to work for Ross Allen on Highland Place. The little Highland Place is nothing more than an alley.
That's correct.
That went from Lyman to Highland, and there was a house on the north side of the road. Beatrice Hartzell lived there, and her mother and father, and then they're all dead now, and you bought that house.
Yes.
And remodeled. And we're going to be talking about that because I think you've won some prizes in the remodeling. Let's get back to Ross Allen for a little while. What did Ross Allen have, or what did he do? And tell us a little bit about his family as well, and his brothers.
Ross Allen was in the parts business. He was the Napa store in Wadsworth at that point in time.
Tell us what Napa is, in case by 2014 Napa no longer exists.
Napa, the NAPA, is National Automotive Parts Association,
right.
And they're a parts distributor to the jobbers out there that are selling wholesale and retail.
Is it worldwide or just national?
Well, they're in Mexico and Canada and Hawaii, so they're not worldwide, but they're not just...
They're big.
Yes.
They're big. And they have the quality products.
Yes.
In other words, it's not a fly-by-night kind of a thing. It's a very, very good organization. Ross Allen had 3 children, did he not? Or 2? Joanne and
Joanne and Bob.
Right, Joanne and Bob, 2 children. And Joanne would be probably now about 68 years old. Bob, how old? 65?
I would say that Bob is 67 now.
67? Okay. And Ross Allen is a brother to Wesley Allen.
Wes Allen, and he had another brother, Ed
Allen.
Eddie Allen.
And Wes Allen is now in his 90s. We had him on the program here. He's still living. And as you recall, Ross Allen, tell us a little bit about his personality.
Working for Ross, a very quiet, mild person.
Mm-hmm.
You hardly ever heard him raise his voice to anybody.
Never heard any of the Allens raise their voices to anyone.
No. Just Ross was very easygoing.
Just a good person.
Yes.
And you worked for Ross for how long?
Probably about 5 years.
Then what did you do?
Ross decided at that point in time to retire, and so his son Bob bought the business, and I tried at that point in time to go in partnerships with Bob and he didn't want a partner. So I thought it was best to move on, to look for something different. And I went into industrial sales for a while, for about a year and a half. Involved a lot of traveling, so I didn't care for that. I worked for the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company in their service stores as a mechanic and a manager in several locations. And after that, Bob Allen and I got back together, and we became partners in the Allen Auto Parts store, and we bought, as time went on, we bought 2 other stores in our chain, one in Barberton and one in Akron.
And they were called Center, were they not?
The one in Akron was Center Automotive, and the one in Barberton was called Bob's Automotive.
Bob's Automotive.
Bob's Auto Parts.
Bob's Auto Parts. You had 3 stores at the
Yes.
time. Bob did what then?
Well, Bob ran, the first store we got was Bob's Auto Parts in Barberton, and he ran that store, and I ran the Wadsworth store. And later on, we bought the Center Automotive in Akron, and he moved to Akron, so he took care of the Akron store, and I took care of the Wadsworth store, and between the 2 of us, we handled the Barberton store.
Between the 2 of you then. Now, Bob then continued with that, or did he finally pull out?
Well, Bob still is involved in the parts store. He and I separated partnerships approximately 15 years ago, and at that same time, he took the Akron store and the Barberton store. I kept Wadsworth and bought the M&S Auto Parts from Burge Hartman and combined the 2, and here we are today.
And that's what, and you moved down then to Broad Street.
Yes, we moved.
And that's where your whole location is right now. We're going to run out of time unless we get to another aspect of your life, but I want to come back to this if we have some time.
Okay.
During all of this time, you started doing something which you like to do and which finally brought you a great deal of recognition a couple of years ago, and that is the fire department. Tell us your first involvement with the fire department, how you became, well, I should say, attracted to it, and what you did and all of that.
Well, I guess the attraction, as close as I lived to town, on South Lyman Street, when the siren would blow, it would perk up my ears and I would wonder what's going on. Always look to see where the trucks were going. Some of the people that I was involved with, Bob Swigert was a fireman, and he was across the street. Bob Hall, which my mom worked for a while, was a fireman, and it enthused me. I was interested in what was going on to help people, help the community. So that was, how I really got started is listening and watching other people do things, and it attracted me to that. And in 1967, I joined the Wadsworth Fire Department.
How old were you then? 26?
Probably, yes.
26. You started as a fully grown adult. You started in the fire department. A lot of kids, had this real fascination. But even though you were a little later in starting, it was nonetheless intense, because you became heavily involved with the fire department. As a matter of fact, you rose to the rank of what, captain?
Assistant chief.
Assistant chief.
When I retired, yes.
When you retired. Remember your first fire?
Well, I guess the first fire was probably just a car fire or a trash fire. It was very minor, a grass fire. Some of the little ones I don't remember, just other than putting them out. They were a quick operation. I guess the first big fire that I do remember was the Redbird food liner.
Ah, yes. Tell us where the Redbird was geographically.
Geographically, it's on Rittman Road, which is State Street south of the city, which the Eagles are in that building today. There was the Redbird food liner and a hardware store in the building.
Who owned the place? Do you remember?
No, I don't
Was Red
remember.
Fenton involved at that time?
That name sounds familiar,
I
yes.
think he was. And what happened, and when was this?
This was in 1974, early in the year. I would guess January. And it was, like I say, the first big fire that I do remember. And I think my activity was working on the roof, early going, trying to cut a hole in the roof to get the smoke out for ventilation. But the whole store was totally involved. The grocery side of the store was totally involved.
What about the hardware?
The hardware had a lot of smoke damage, and a lot of cleanup was involved in the hardware, but the hardware was not actually involved in the fire.
Who was chief at the time?
I would say Chet Fish might have been chief, or Carol Everhard. I don't remember the...
I think Carol was already dead by then.
I think Carol was dead by then, so it was, Chet Fish was the chief at that point in time, yes.
Chet Fish was the chief, and of course Chet is gone now too. We have a whole line of these wonderful people who were involved with the fire department who are now gone. Saved our lives for, and this next question is going to be the telling one. How much did you get for a fire? How many dollars did you get for going out there and putting your life on the line to save other people's lives?
I would say that we probably got $3
$3
at that point in time, yes.
$3 to go out there to save people's lives. I think that's just absolutely phenomenal. Joe Bender, rest his soul, gone also, was 80 some odd years old, and he was still in the fire department. And Joe, as we all know, was quite well taken care of financially. But they claimed that one of the reasons he would do that because that $3 was there. Now, it's a little bit better than that, but it still isn't enough. As you remember big fires, what are some of the other big fires that you remember?
Well, probably the next biggest fire that I do remember was the Wadsworth Furniture Store on Johnson Road. Right. Which would be probably a half mile east of Silver Creek
Road.
Probably the reason I remember that is one of the biggest fires that I was first involved with as far as being in charge. Chet was still the chief and he was on vacation. So I was in charge of the men in the fire at that point in time, and that was a real working fire, and we had numerous fire departments involved in that. We had Norton, we had Rittman, we had Doylestown, and we had Sharon Center come in and stand by at our station for that fire.
What caused that fire, and when was it? Do you remember?
I think the fire was caused by a light in the ceiling, which I think a customer of theirs found it and come and told the Blairs that, you know, they had a light smoking in one of their rooms. I would say maybe 77 is when they had that fire.
77.
Yeah.
Now, that location where the Wadsworth Furniture Company is 1/2 mile east of Silver Creek Road on Johnson Road was the site of the old number 11 schoolhouse, which was a schoolhouse. That was torn down, unfortunately. We don't preserve things in Wadsworth the way we ought to. We tear them down right away. But the old number 11 schoolhouse actually served an area which was over a mile in the south, a mile east, a mile west, and a mile north. The number 11 schoolhouse then was turned over to a regular living house. I mean, people would live in it, and there were some families that lived there, and I can go back maybe 70 years on those families. The Darr family, D-A-R-R, and the Jackson family. Actually, Marietta Jackson is still living. There were two Jackson girls, Marietta and Lois. Marietta Kime, K-I-M-E, lived there. And I want to try to get her on the program someday to see if we can't get some history about that portion of of Wadsworth. But they tore that down and they built the furniture store. Well, they didn't tear it down first and then build the furniture store, but they eventually tore it down when they rebuilt it and all of that. That was a big fire. Now, toward the end of your career, was there a bigger fire yet?
Oh, yes.
What was that?
The last big fire that I was involved with was the Wadsworth Station door and the Holmesbrook fire.
The same night?
Same night.
Halloween, what, 2 years ago?
Halloween 2 years ago.
How on earth did you handle two big fires like that?
We had a lot of help. We had many fire departments in from other communities. We couldn't have handled it without what we call a mutual aid pack and having people come in and give us assistance of putting the fire out.
We wish we didn't have big fires, but the big fires are a reality. Charlie, tell us a little bit about some of the people in the fire department. Personalities. Start with some of the ones of your vintage and perhaps older, and then some younger ones.
Well, it's going to be hard to do. There's been probably 100 firemen that have come and gone since I've been there, and maybe without a list of names, that's going to be hard to do, and not trying to slight anybody and forget somebody. Dave Blatter, which had just retired maybe 5 years ago, was last of one of the older fellas.
And where's Dave now?
Well, I can't answer that. Dave lived on North Lyman Street towards the end, and they just sold a house and bought a condo, and I don't know where he bought a condo. I know he has moved, but I can't tell you where.
Who are some of the old-timers then that you remember when you first came on board?
Well, Tom Baldwin.
Tom Baldwin will kill you if you try to say he's an old-timer.
Probably. Joe Hagedorn, Bob Leonard.
Bob's a little older than
Yes. And Joe would have been.
Yeah, Joe's older too.
Shorty Leonard.
Shorty Leonard, yes.
Wow, there's just
a lot of them.
A lot of them out there.
Do you remember any real characters in the fire department?
Well, Tom Baldwin would be a
real
character.
Tell us some of the things that Tom Baldwin has done or would do.
Well, a dry sense of humor.
Tremendously dry sense of humor. I want to try to get Tom on the program.
Tom would be a good one for you.
Because Tom is now, we're coming down to the age group where Tom happens to be, and he would be a very good one. Tell us a little bit about this dry sense of humor, I mean, as it relates to fire.
Tom wouldn't say much, but when Tom said something, you should listen. When I became a fireman, Tom was, I think, a lieutenant on the fire department, and he was instrumental of getting me to being a driver and operator. We were both close. We were both downtown, and we'd get to the fire station. I'm going to show you how to drive the truck, and he's going to. So he didn't have to. He says, I want to do other things. And a couple other things about Tom. I know responded to the fire station on a motorcycle. I know he'd drive his pickup truck and he couldn't get through a light, and he'd just push a car out of the way and keep on going. But that's some of the things that
he's a great person
that Tom did, and yes, a great person.
What about the some of the other quieter types? Did anyone do anything really heroic that you can remember?
Well, no, nobody in particular. we all had a job to do, and we got the job done.
Were there any fatalities in any of the fires that you ever had?
We've had a few fatalities over the years, yes. No firemen did we have any fatalities in the ranks.
In the ranks, but what about were you present at any fires that had fatalities?
Yes, I was.
Do you remember which they were?
Well, we had a small child on Chestnut Street that we lost in a house fire. We had one on South Lyman. No, not on South Lyman. Yes, on South Lyman, across from Franklin School on the corner, another child. We had a fella out on Reimer Road that I think was smoking in bed and got him, and I could go, there's more.
I'm sure that there would be, and that's unfortunate as well. Beyond the fire department, now you became the assistant chief, and you had 30 years of service, is that correct?
That is correct.
We had the City of Wadsworth had a big party for you when you finally retired. Why did you retire? I mean, you're a young man. Is there any, I shouldn't say why did you retire. You have not really retired intellectually with your zest for serving, but is it something that you just wanted to do? You had already done this, and
well, time had come. It's a young man's job, and I always maintained that in 30 years I was going to leave, and just things with the family, things with the business. But I probably did it for the family and myself.
Surely.
And still see most of the people on the department a lot.
And you should. But the reason that I said that you still haven't retired intellectually, you have a tremendous hobby which has to do with fires. What is it? Fire equipment, I should say.
Well, we have, and I say we because Nancy and I, it's a family operation. We have collected antique fire toys, cast iron and metal toys, and we must have 150 of the antique toys. Besides the antique toys, I have 5 full-size fire trucks that we've gathered over the years. I have 2 of the fire trucks that Wadsworth originally bought, a 47 American LaFrance and a 61 Peter Persch ladder truck.
And what did they have before that? They bought them used?
I think prior to that, they have bought some new trucks, but I'm not sure.
The first one that I remember was probably a 1925 or 30 or something. Made a horrible amount of noise, and it wasn't very big, but it was impressive, and it's beautiful, beautiful old truck. I don't know if that one's still around or not. Do you know?
We've looked for some of the old trucks that Wadsworth has had and couldn't find them, so I don't know where they are.
So your earliest one that you're preserving is a 1947 LaFrance?
Well, that's a one of the 2 trucks that came from Wadsworth originally. I have a 39 Seagraves that came from Cuyahoga Falls. I have a 41 Seagraves that came from Massillon, and the 41 Seagraves is a ladder truck. And I have a 51 Chevy pumper that came from Sharon Center. It was a Sharon Center truck.
I remember the day they bought excuse me, the 47 LaFrance. They were not parading it around town, but they were driving it very slowly around town for people to see. And it looked like a convertible. It didn't have a top on it. And then the next one had a top on it. Is that correct?
No, not the next one. As far as the ladder truck, which is a 61, that is an open cab truck.
That's open cab. Why do they have open cab trucks? I mean, it's always going to rain. It's going to snow.
I guess I really can't answer why they have open cab trucks. Anything today, though, is a closed cab.
I would imagine so, because, you know, especially if you're standing there and you're wet and you're cold and it's 0 degrees, and fires do happen at 0 degrees. And you have a lot of wind chill if you're going 35, 40 miles an hour. What, tell us a little bit about what you do with these trucks, that is, the ones that you have preserved.
Well, we use them for parades. There's some organizations that we belong to, antique fire truck organizations, that they have musters, and a muster is you take the trucks to certain places and they have certain activities you can do. Most of the things we do is go to lakes or ponds and we pump water. They have some timed activities if you want to get involved, how long it takes to get water out of a pond and through your hose through your hose line. So there's all kinds of activities for them, yes.
You even have races with fire trucks.
They do that, yes. I haven't, but that is done.
It's extremely interesting, but we need to get another facet of your life, and that is Nancy, your wife, Nancy Bell. Tell us about Nancy Bell and how you met her and what her involvement with the city, and still, maybe she still is. Is she still a dispatcher?
No, she is not a dispatcher.
But she was a dispatcher for years and years and years.
We've been married for approximately 15 years. Prior to that, she'd probably had 10 years as a dispatcher for the police department and fire department for the city of Wadsworth. And when Carly was born, and she is 14, Nancy never went back to work. She stayed home with the children.
That's wonderful. It's good if you can do that. What did she do as a dispatcher? I mean, and maybe we ought to get her on the program to tell us what the early dispatchers, because she's one of the first dispatchers, not the first, but one of the first.
Well, of course, she
was a young girl, I think probably 18 or 19 or 20 when she was a dispatcher, wasn't she?
I think when she got out of college, she went to work for the police department, yes.
Oh, it was before that, I believe, wasn't it? I could be wrong.
I'm not sure.
I think I can remember talking to her one time. I was on council in 1970. And I was talking about her going to college. See, Nancy's how old now? About 50.
She was born in 47.
47, so she's 51 years old. So this would have been almost 30 years ago. Yeah, probably at that time, as I remember. I could be wrong, and you should know better than I. But she's been a dispatcher for a long time. As I remember, there were 3 or 4 dispatchers only, and one was Linda Foda, Nancy, and
Jan
Holsinger. Cora, yeah. It'll come to me. And another girl, too. But there were just 3 or 4 of them.
I think there was only 4, yes.
3 or 4 of them, and they took 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
That's right.
So these women really were the pioneers. And I remember also when they started asking for uniforms, because people wouldn't respect them when they would come in. They would think that this woman here is, this waitress here behind the counter is my servant. They didn't realize that they have a lot of authority. Tell us a little bit about Nancy and her family and her sisters rather, and the parents.
Nancy lived at 377 High Street with her mom and dad, also with her grandparents.
Right.
Her mom and dad lived upstairs in the house, and her grandparents lived downstairs. Nancy had has a sister, Pam, which lives in Columbus.
And Pam is younger or older than Nancy?
Pam is older.
Pam is older than, that's right. And tell us a little bit about Grandpa Hartman. No, that's great Grandpa Hartman. Grandpa, grandparents' name, Grandpa Everhard.
I can't tell you much about them. Nancy would have to be the one that could fill you in on that.
We're going to have her on because there's a tremendous amount of history there in that. Let's go back to your earlier days on the fire department. Tell us the tremendous changes which had to come as a result of government intervention, new products being made, new laws being made, and so forth and so on, and new requirements. And when you first came on, what did you have to do? Learn where the hose was and that water put out fires? That was about it.
That's correct. Early going, we'd go into houses without air packs and masks, and you would just fight the elements of the heat and the smoke and the fire. And as time went on, government intervention got into a safety program, and there's a lot of changes that came about because of safety. The equipment you wore, self-contained breathing apparatus before you went into a burning house or a house filled full of smoke. You don't want to inhale all the carbons and fumes that were created inside the house because of the fire.
And what about the difference in the materials we use now and the different problems that those cause?
Well, the early fire equipment that I used was rubber coats, which would burn just along with the materials that were in the house. They had a liner protect you. We had just a rubber coat and full-length boots. And today you have Nomex suits, you have fire retardant suits with liners and barriers inside of them, and you have pants and a coat which you are totally enclosed and protected from the elements. Your body is completely protected.
What about the hazardous waste kind of a thing that you had to become involved with after, well, within the past, what, 10 years, 15?
Well, the hazardous waste has become a problem because of the manufacturing of materials that are made today. It's just something that is probably become more aware of because of the environment and trying to protect life and property.
What about the education?
Education is ongoing. You just can't get enough education. I think when I first started, a basic fire class was 16 hours, and today you can get up to 200 hours to become a fireman and have the good rating.
At the University of Akron, we gave a degree in firefighting as a result of all of the problems that have accompanied new equipment, new regulations, and all of the other kinds of things. Let's move now from there quickly, if we can, to the auto parts once again, which of course is where your livelihood is. What has changed dramatically in terms of auto parts?
Well, technology is made a big difference in electronics. There is so much electronics and computers used in the automotive industry today that is where the big change is, and people to work on them they have to have a good education to be able to figure out the problems of the automobile today.
You know, I heard a report just the other day from a person whom I know knows, but we were all talking about this Y2K, which of course is, and I'll explain that here today because 20 years from now people may not know what Y2K means, but year 2000, 2K, 1000, in terms of computers. And this person said, you know, everyone is worried about electricity, worried about interaction of bank computers and so forth. Maybe we ought to be worried about automobiles, because most automobiles have a lot of computers in them. Now, do you have any notion, do you have anything in your series of education programs in the automotive industry that would even so much as suggest that in the year 2000, on January 1, 2000, that something would go wrong with automobiles as a result of computers?
Well, I don't see anything in the automobile itself. They're all self-contained, that year and time will make any difference as far as something going wrong with the automobile because of the year 2000.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that, because, you know, everyone is getting electric generators and so forth, and maybe we ought to get a horse or something like that. Going back to your earlier days on South Lyman Street, who were some of your neighbors?
To the south of me was Ed Transu.
Okay, now Ed Transu.
Ed Transu worked for the City of Wadsworth. He was a policeman.
Policeman. Had how many children?
2, I think, but I'm not sure.
4 girls.
4 girls,
yeah,
okay.
Two of the younger ones, but there were 4 girls. And tell us a little bit about Ed Transu as you remembered him.
Well, I remember Ed Transu as a big man. When I looked up to Ed Transu, it looked like I was looking up into the trees.
And strong.
And strong, a big fella.
Very strong, yes. Very strong. He was law unto himself.
That's correct.
He certainly was. And what about Mrs. Transu? Tell us a little bit about Mrs. Transu.
Probably never, you know, other than out in the yard and in the house, in and around the house. She was always there. But I don't think I could tell you a lot about her.
Good people, though. Very, very good people. And who else lived down close there?
Well, on the north side, Harv Weldy lived there. And I don't remember seeing Harv Weldy live there. From the family talking that Harv lived on one side of us and Ed lived on the other.
Who was Harv Weldy?
Harv Weldy was another policeman in the City of Wadsworth.
That's right. And you had the 2 policemen.
Yes, I had to keep straight there in the neighborhood.
You had the police force right there that's why I wanted you to bring these out. Then as you go up, one more north and one more south, and then go across the street.
Well, there was no more north.
Because that was
the high con valve.
Right, an injector.
Or the injector. And of course, you talk about the police in the area. Tommy Lucas lived about half a block away
on the other side of the road.
On the other side of the road on Lucas Court.
So you had the police department right there.
We're
on
safe
Lyman
in the neighborhood, we hope.
Surely were. Do you remember Tommy Lucas?
Just barely. I remember his son and his grandson a little more.
And who were they?
Well, they were both Tommy Lucas.
Tommy Lucas.
But I do remember Tommy Lucas, the police chief, and he was not a big man. No. Probably short, stocky. But that's really about all I remember.
And who were some of the other people in your neighborhood that you remembered?
Well, of course, Bob Swigert lived across the street on the corner of Lucas Court in Lyman.
And now, let me ask you this question. Bob Swigert had a son. What was his name?
John Swigert.
And what did John do?
Well, John was on the police department for a while.
That's what I wanted to bring out, the fact that all of the policemen seem to live right down there in that area.
John was safety director for a number of years, and I can't tell you the number of years and when he was, but I know he was safety director at one point in time.
That's right, exactly. And as you would go south on the other side of the street, do you remember some of those families?
Boy, the names...
Well, they escape us.
They escape me. I don't remember.
Absolutely. Franklin School, principal and some of the teachers.
I don't remember.
No teachers, huh? Oh, boy. they're going to call me tonight and say, I had him in school.
That would be good to know. Yes.
Then we'll find out who they were. Now let's go back to the Napa store again. What do you call it? Do you call it?
We call it Allen M&S Auto Parts.
Allen M&S Auto Parts, right.
We combined the two together.
The people who work there now, who are they?
John North is my manager up front. John Dillon is my shop foreman. Jeff Lance is a machinist. And John Dillon is also a machinist. And Stan King is my outside salesman.
Okay. And what do you do?
I do everything else.
You do everything else.
We all share in all the responsibilities. Whatever it takes to get the job done, it's John, myself, Jeff doesn't, whatever we need to do, we have to try to get it accomplished.
Now, Virgil Hartman had his wife working with him, and she took care of the books.
That is correct.
Is that possible anymore, that somebody could just, quote, take care of the books? Or is it so mechanized now that you have...
Oh, no, that's possible. Nancy works a couple days a week in the office doing paperwork, and that's a tremendous job of shuffling papers and trying to make everything meet what's got to be done. And she does a good job of taking care of that, because I don't have enough time to do it all. So we need help.
And sneaking over to the fire department once again, the Wadsworth Fire Department has never had any women fire people. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is there any thought of that?
There's always been thought of that. We've had applications from gals that were interested. I really don't know whatever happened, whether they didn't pursue it any further.
Without putting your neck on the line, would it be a good idea or not, do you think?
If they can do the job, I don't have a problem with it.
You don't have a problem as far as their gender is concerned?
No.
What are the real problems with a person who would not have extraordinary strength? I mean,
well, that problem would be
that would be the thing.
Your equipment. You probably have 50 to 75 pounds of equipment you're going to wear if you go inside a burning structure. And that's,
right off the bat, 50 to 75% of equipment.
That's right.
And then what about the need for physical strength?
Well, the physical strength has to be there, even in the fellas. We need, if somebody is down in a house and you need to bring them out, you need the physical strength and ability to do this.
And the reason I bring that up is that I heard you say a little while ago that firefighting is for the younger man.
It is, it's a lot of work. It's hard work. It's a lot of training, and you just have to keep fit.
And the fact remains that as we get older, we start losing muscle mass. I mean, we think that we're as strong as we used to be. I used to be able to lift my own weight. Now I can lift only half my weight. And I don't think that I'm any less weak or any less strong than I used to be, except that muscle mass is gone. So I guess we do have to have young people in the fire department. One quick question before we come to an end here, and we certainly will be coming to an end soon, unfortunately. You have a book here with the fire department, and we have seen this book. However, tell us your involvement in this book and what the whole story is. How did this come about? I'm gonna hold this up so that the people can see which one I'm talking about.
It's our 100th anniversary book. My involvement in the book isn't a whole lot other than trying to feed some information to the two people that did most of the work.
And who did who did most of the work?
Carl Rommel and Jim Riley.
Let's spell Carl Rommel's name and Jim Riley's name for posterity. Are the names in here?
The names are in there, yes.
I'm going to spell those so that we can get them.
Right here.
James Riley, R-I-L-E-Y, and Carl Rommel, R-O-M-M-E-L. Okay, those are the two people who did
Those are the two people that did most of the work on the book as far as putting it together. Now,
1996?
Yes. Now, the rest of the people involved in the fire department and EMS, they helped sell ads, they helped get information. We fed stuff to these two people, but those two people are the ones that did the work on the book.
And there is this book, as far as everyone knows, is accurate, and there are people in Wadsworth who can attest to not what happened 100 years ago, but what happened 90 years ago or 95 years ago.
And that's true, and there was a lot of research done at the library through the newspaper articles that the library had, talking to old retired firemen to get this information. To the best of our knowledge, we hope it's 100% correct. But
Charlie Boast, B-O-O-S, and I'm so pleased we had an opportunity to have you on this program because you've given us a lot of information, tidbits that we have never heard before, and certainly tidbits that actually made Wadsworth history. You have a legacy in your own young time, even though you're, what, 57 years of age now. A legacy in your own young time, and we are certainly proud of that. And I guess it was worth the $3 we gave you to go out and save our lives. Thank you for being on the program, and we certainly hope that those people who watch it will understand and certainly appreciate what firemen have to do in order to put fires out and to save our lives, all for, what, $3 a fire?
Back then, yes. And thank you.
Thanks again.